Welcome back. This is video 2 for the endocrine system, chapter 18, AMP2, Panola College. So now that we know what a hormone is and what it does, we'll discuss what prompts a gland to secrete or inhibit a hormone. Now, when it comes to endocrine gland secretion, this is going to be regulated in 3 different ways. We can have what we call neural control, we can have hormonal control, or we can have humoral control. Okay? Please pay attention to these spellings a little bit later on, the meanings of numbers 2 and 3, hormonal versus humoral, because those are 2 distinct and different systems. All right? Now, these 3 branches of control and regulation will ensure that the endocrine system operate in an effective and efficient manner. And it's going to be very similar to the 3 branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial, that enable the government, at least in principle, to operate in an effective and efficient manner. Okay? All right. So we'll start with neural control, okay? So during instances of neural control, nerve fibers will stimulate the endocrine organs to release hormones. Last semester, we talked about the sympathetic nervous system and its role in initiating the fight or flight response, okay? Let me get my trusty pen here. So sympathetic, fight or flight response. Okay? This enables us to act quickly in potentially dangerous situations. We need to run like hell from something that is potentially dangerous. This is the response that will be activated by the sympathetic nervous system. Recall that during the fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system will stimulate the adrenal medulla, okay, to release epinephrine and norepinephrine, okay? These hormones will prime the body to flee from a stressful or dangerous situation, okay? Let me see if there's anything else I want to say here. Yeah, so that's neural control. Remember, here with the sympathetic versus parasympathetic systems, in your sympathetic response, that's fight or flight. That's what's going to occur if you need to run from an angry and hungry bear, for instance. That bear is looking to do, unspeakable and ungodly things to you, and you need to get away as quickly as possible. Parasympathetic, that's rest and digest. That's you on, the beach, the tasty drink, chair, sound of the sea, just taking it easy. That's rest and digest, okay? So with your sympathetic, when it comes to pupil, heart, lungs, GI, and kidneys, your pupils are going to dilate because you're going to need to see where you're going when you're running from that hungry and angry bear. Your heart is going to increase heart rate and pressure because blood is going to need to get to where it needs to go so that your muscles and bones and other tissues can be in good shape to get you away from the bear. You're gonna be breathing a lot more because you're going to need to get oxygen into your body, and you're just going to be breathing from all the running that you're doing. And these 2 things here, your gastrointestinal and kidneys, these are going to decrease in activity because what you are not going to be concerned with, okay, is, processing any food that you may have in your gut or urinating. Okay, those two things are going to be they're going to be put on the back burner while you're trying to get away from this, this angry, hungry bear. Okay. All right. So this is kind of the profile. Oh, excuse me. This is kind of the profile here for different areas in the body that will be essentially initiated when epinephrine and norepinephrine are released into the body from the adrenal medulla. Okay. So your summary for neurocontrol is the stimulation of the nervous system that will trigger the release of the hormone. Neurocontrol stimulation of the nervous system. Okay, that's technically correct. But hormone, epinephrine, epinephrine's a hormone. Norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter. So, yeah, you can leave that be. Anyway, example of this: release of norepinephrine and epinephrine by the adrenal medulla in response to stimulation by the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. And that is what we see over here. Okay, so we have that nerve signal coming from the spinal cord that will make its way to the adrenal medulla, which is the inner part of the adrenal gland, and then release epinephrine and norepinephrine into the bloodstream to initiate the fight or flight response. Okay, so that's our first method of regulation for endocrine glands. Our second type or second arm of regulation is hormonal. Okay, and hormonal control of the endocrine glands and organs is achieved by a hierarchy. Hierarchy similar to the one that we have here at Panola College, where we have our president, Dr. Pace, our vice president, one of our vice presidents, Dr. Adams, and then several different department chairs, such as Dr. Rutherford, who's over kinesiology and sciences, and I forget the names of these other two ladies here, but they are department chairs here at the college. So during hormonal control, endocrine organs are stimulated by hormones from other endocrine organs. Okay. So as an example, if Dr. Pace is an endocrine gland, she will release a hormone that will then travel down to Dr. Adams, and then Dr. Adams will be stimulated by that hormone. He will in turn release hormones that will then travel to Dr. Rutherford here and here, and they in turn will then release substances. Okay. So the endocrine system is very much set up like a hierarchy, so that different glands can respond to hormones. Okay. So during hormonal control, endocrine glands are stimulated by hormones from other endocrine organs. The process begins with the hypothalamus, which directs the activities of the pituitary gland. If we're coming back to this example over here, Dr. Pace is the hypothalamus. The pituitary gland is Dr. Adams. Okay? And then Dr. Rutherford in particular would be an endocrine gland of some sort, like the thyroid gland or the adrenal gland, or the parathyroid glands, okay, et cetera, et cetera. The hypothalamus will do this through the release of what we call hypothalamic releasing hormone and a hypothalamic non-releasing hormone. You can think of a hypothalamic non-releasing hormone as a hypothalamic inhibiting hormone. Those two terms would be one in the same, okay? So coming back to our example, okay, see yours truly right down here. So we'll get down to this particular example. But the hypothalamus will release a releasing hormone, okay? That releasing hormone will then make its way to the pituitary. So releasing hormone will make its way to the pituitary. The pituitary will then release a hormone that will make its way to a target organ. And then the target organ will release hormones that will make its way to target cells. Okay. So in this example, Dr. Pace would be the hypothalamus. Dr. Adams would be the pituitary. Dr. Rutherford would be an endocrine organ. And then I would be a target cell. Okay. Because Dr. Pace directs Dr. Adams directs Dr. Rutherford directs me. Okay. All right. And we'll learn more about all of these different hormones over here and up here when we go through each and every endocrine organ. Okay. All right. Just re-exploring the concept of negative feedback. When hormones from the department heads rise in the bloodstream, they have an end goal. Okay? And once that goal has been achieved, the pituitary and hypothalamus can then receive signals from the department head hormones. Okay? So if you look down here, hypothalamus releasing a hypothalamic releasing hormone that will then tell the anterior pituitary to release a hormone to the target gland, and that will result in the release of a hormone. Once this hormone reaches its target or end level, that hormone can then feed back to the pituitary and the hypothalamus. And what that will do is it will signal the pituitary and the hypothalamus to shut down. Okay? And once that happens, okay, the levels of the hormone will then start to drop. Okay? And the hormone will drop and drop and drop and drop and drop until it gets to a particular level where it's too low. That will signal the whole system to turn on again. Okay? The negative feedback stops, and this whole system will then run like normal. Okay? The hormone will then go up. It will get to its target end level. You'll get the negative feedback. The hormone comes down, and that's where we get that nice range of value for a particular substance like calcium or glucose. This will in turn inhibit or turn off the pituitary hypothalamic hormones, ending the chain of hormonal control. Okay? So negative feedback is a very important mechanism in regulating homeostasis. So in summary, in hormonal control, the release of one hormone will trigger the release of another hormone. Example, thyroid stimulating hormone, which comes from the anterior pituitary. We abbreviate that as TSH. When released from the anterior pituitary gland, will bind to the thyroid gland to cause the release of thyroid hormone known as T3 and T4. Okay. So you see that over here, anterior pituitary. Let me get my pen over here. So anterior pituitary is releasing TSH. TSH makes its way to the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland releases thyroid hormone, otherwise known as T3 and T4. And that will make its way into the bloodstream, and then T3 and T4 can do their things. Okay. The last type of regulation that we need to talk about is humoral control. Humoral is derived from the term humor, which refers to bodily fluids such as blood. And what happens here is that humoral control is achieved by monitoring the levels of various substances in bodily fluids. Okay? If a homeostatic imbalance is detected, corrective actions are taken to help the body regain homeostasis. So just kind of looking back, in neural control, the cause of stimulation for a gland to release a hormone comes from the sympathetic nervous system. Okay? In hormonal control, okay, the stimulation for an endocrine gland to release a hormone comes from another hormone from another endocrine gland. Okay? And here in humoral control, the stimulation for an endocrine gland to release a hormone will come from the levels of a particular substance in the blood. Okay? So 3 different types of regulation for release of hormones from endocrine glands. Okay? So for example, if blood glucose rises, okay, insulin will be released from the pancreas, and that will cause blood glucose levels to go down. If blood glucose levels go down, then glucagon is released from the pancreas, which will cause blood glucose levels to go up. Okay? So, summary for humoral control. Changes in the level of a nutrient or ion in the blood will trigger the release of a hormone. The release of insulin, again, from the beta cells of the pancreas when blood glucose levels rise or increase, and the release of glucagon from the alpha cells of the pancreas when blood glucose levels fall. So that's an example of humoral control. Okay, so we see that over here with insulin in particular. Insulin released into the bloodstream. Insulin will then cause, insulin is released into the bloodstream as a result of increased blood glucose. That will cause blood glucose levels to fall as a result. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit more about hormones. Okay. So hormones are organized into 2 broad categories based upon whether the hormone molecules are transported within the blood. We have circulating hormones, and then we have local hormones. Okay? Circulating hormones are transported by the blood to different glands or organs in the body, and then local hormones are short-lived molecules that will influence cells within the local tissue from which they are produced. But where we want to focus for the next couple of slides is with our circulating hormones, as they compose the overwhelming majority of hormones in general. Okay? So, circulating hormones, okay, are going to be classified in one of 3 ways. Okay? The first class or category are lipid-based hydrophobic hormones. Okay? Lipid-based hydrophobic hormones. Remember, the term hydrophobic means water-fearing. So these lipid-based hormones are going to be fat-based hormones. Okay? The second class or category are your biogenic amine or hydrophilic hormones. Okay? Hydrophilic means water-loving. So these hormones will love to be around water. And then the last one are our protein or hydrophilic hormones. These are hydrophilic as well. Your lipid-based or hydrophobic hormones are all going to be derived from cholesterol. Okay? So cholesterol molecules are modified to create steroid hormones. Amino acid molecules are going to be the building blocks for biogenic amine and protein hormones. Okay, so the bottom line here, everyone, is that your steroid hormones are going to be water-fearing. So let me do this. The way I want you to think about all these different terms, okay? The following terms that I'm going to list are all synonyms in essence, okay? So a steroid hormone, okay, cholesterol-based hormone, a lipid-based hormone, or a hydrophobic hormone. All of those things, okay, all go in the same class or category, and that is right here. Okay. So if you see any of those terms on an exam or assessment, you want to think this particular category right here. Okay. Again, steroid-based, cholesterol-based, lipid-based, or hydrophobic. All those things are the same. Okay. So examples of hormones like this will be things like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, and aldosterone. We'll talk more about all of these when we get to the endocrine organs. Okay. Your biogenic amines, okay, are going to be water soluble, except for thyroid hormone. Derived from an amino acid that is modified, like tyrosine. And examples of these are norepinephrine, epinephrine, thyroid hormone, and melatonin. And then we have our protein, or hydrophilic hormones, which are also water soluble. They consist of amino acid chains. Okay, so the terms that will be synonymous for your protein hormones over here would be protein hormones, amino acid hormones, hydrophilic hormones or water-loving hormones, and then water-soluble. So all of those things are synonymous. Your biogenic amines are also water-soluble or hydrophilic, but this is going to compose a very small percentage of hormones in general. The overwhelming majority of hormones are going to belong to this class over here, the protein class. Okay. All right. So we'll go through each one of these and talk about distinctive characteristics of each. So we'll start with the lipid-based or hydrophobic hormones. Okay, lipid-based hormones are split up into two groups. We have our cholesterol derivatives, which are our steroid hormones, and then we have our arachidonic acid derivatives, which are called eicosanoids. Okay, so your steroid hormones are bound to specific transport proteins in the plasma. They remain in circulation longer than peptide hormones. They include androgens, such as testosterone from the testes in males, estrogens and progesterone from the ovaries in females, corticosteroids from the adrenal cortex, and then calcitriol from the kidneys. Okay, so very short list for steroid hormones. Okay, and again, these are going to be derived from cholesterol, which looks like this here. Okay, so this is the basic skeleton. These three rings here, followed by this ring here. So these hexagons and this pentagon. Eicosanoids, on the other hand, are formed from arachidonic acid, which is a 20-carbon fatty acid. Some eicosanoids or leukotrienes will have secondary roles as hormones. And these will include prostaglandins, which will coordinate local cellular activities. Okay. Prostaglandins are converted to thromboxanes and prostacyclins in some tissues. Okay. So for our lipid-based or hydrophobic hormones, we have two classes: steroid hormones and eicosanoids. All right. Okay, so we're pretty much done there. Here are more steroid hormones. So you can see the point of this slide I wanted to show you is that all of them have this. I'm just going to highlight it here. So this basic skeleton composed of these three hexagons followed by this pentagon. That's cholesterol, okay? And you can see that every single steroid hormone has that basic skeleton, okay? So these are all going to be cholesterol-based hormones. Biogenic amine are hydrophilic hormones. These are split up into two groups. We have our tryptophan derivatives. Tryptophan is an amino acid. And then we have our tyrosine derivatives. Okay. This is tryptophan over here. Okay, so that's what the amino acid looks like. You don't need to know that explicitly, but I just wanted to include that to show you what it looks like. But your tryptophan derivatives are going to be serotonin and melatonin. Okay. And then your tyrosine derivatives, this is tyrosine over here, are going to be your catecholamines. So epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine are your main catecholamines. And then thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. Okay? So that is going to be your division for your biogenic amine or hydrophilic hormones. Over here in this example, this particular amino acid, this is tyrosine. So that's this down here. And again, your catecholamines and thyroid hormones will come from tyrosine. Serotonin and melatonin will come from tryptophan. As far as sources of tyrosine and tryptophan, tryptophan, high levels of it can be found. It's typically associated with turkey, but it can actually be found in a number of different sources of poultry. So it's not just turkey, it's chicken, duck, hen, all those different things. And then tyrosine is going to be found in things like red meat, salmon, dairy, cheeses, things of that nature. Okay, our last category is going to be our protein or hydrophilic hormones. Again, this is going to be the category that most hormones in the body will belong to. Okay, so the overwhelming majority of hormones in general are protein or peptide based. These represent chains of amino acids which are synthesized as prohormones. So another key difference between your protein hormones and your biogenic amine hormones is that these will come from a single amino acid, okay, that has been modified. This, or these, will come from a chain or string of amino acids, okay? Okay, a prohormone is going to be an inactive molecule converted to active hormones before or after they are secreted. So your short polypeptides or small proteins will include ADH, oxytocin or OXT, insulin, growth hormone or GH, and then prolactin or pro. Okay. So again, we have another short list here. Every other hormone that I have not listed will belong to the large protein category. Okay? So if the hormone is not ADH, oxytocin, insulin, growth hormone, prolactin, epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, T3, T4, serotonin, melatonin, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, corticosteroids, calcitriol, or prostaglandins, then it's going in this category right here. Okay. All right. Okay. Most hormones are going to be protein-based except for hormones secreted by the adrenal cortex. That will include corticosteroids and androgens and cortisol. And then hormones secreted by the reproductive glands. Those are your estrogens, your progesterones, and testosterone. Okay. The adrenal cortex, just so you guys are all aware, we'll go into more detail on this later, but the adrenal cortex is the outer layer of the adrenal gland and will secrete these three hormones. We'll talk more about these in detail when we get to the adrenal gland. The adrenal medulla is the inner layer of the adrenal gland, and it will secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are your catecholamines. Okay? The difference in structure between hydrophilic, okay, so hydrophilic, we have our biogenic amines and our protein hormones. For your hydrophobic hormones, those are your steroid hormones. That will influence the transport of the hormone in the blood and how the hormone interacts with its target cell. Okay. All right, just a few more slides, guys, and then we will be done for this particular video, part 2. So hormones are transported through the body by the blood. We talked about this previously, like T'Challa or Black Panther is being transported by that car right there. And they will come into contact with all the body's tissues and organs. Okay? However, hormones only affect tissues and receptors specific to those particular hormones. This is another, I've mentioned this multiple times in this particular chapter, this concept of specificity. That is important when we are talking about endocrine glands and their hormones. Okay? Receptors will sense and respond to certain stimuli. We see that happening here. So we have a hormone binding to a receptor. Okay? And as that happens, an action will be propagated. When a hormone binds to a receptor, it is able to influence the activity of the cell. Okay. All right, last couple of slides here. Now, steroid or fat-based hormones. Okay, the receptors for steroid hormones are found in one of two places. Okay, they can be inside the cell, in the cell nucleus, or they can be inside the cell in the cytosol or cytoplasm. Because steroid hormones are fat-based, they can enter the cell without assistance and travel to their respective receptor. Remember from last semester that cell membranes are composed of phospholipids, okay, which are, that's essentially fat, okay? So because the steroid hormones are fat and the cell membrane is fat, the hormone can just walk right on in. Doesn't need any assistance to get to its respective receptor. They then set off a chain of events, which ends in protein synthesis and cellular action. Okay, so steroid hormones are pretty simple because they just enter the cell membrane and just do their thing. Okay. Your amino acid or protein-based hormones over here, on the other hand, are a little bit more complicated. Okay, And that is because the receptors, well, first of all, amino acid are protein-based hormones. This is going to be composed of the biogenic amines and the protein hormones. Over here, for your steroid or fat-based hormones, that's going to be that first category we talked about that come from cholesterol or arachidonic acid. Okay? So the receptors for amino acid hormones are found on the cell membrane or surface of the cell. Okay? The cell membrane is fat-based. That means that it is hydrophobic. These particular hormones are hydrophilic. Okay? So these hormones cannot enter the cell by themselves. They need assistance. They need help. Okay? So when an amino acid hormone binds to the cell membrane receptor, the receptor will stimulate the release of what we call a second messenger. And it is the second messenger that will work inside the cell to produce a cascade of responses. There are various second messengers, and they vary from cell to cell. Okay. So this is how steroid or fat-based hormones work. You got the steroid hormone here. You got your cell membrane here. This is fat-based. This is fat-based. So this can just walk right on in, bind to a receptor either in the cytoplasm or on the cell nucleus, and you get your cellular response from here. Okay. Amino acid or protein-based hormones, okay, will bind to a receptor on the cell membrane. These cannot enter the cell. Okay. This is fat-based. This is protein-based. Okay. So these two things don't go together, so this cannot enter. This will bind to a receptor here. This will activate a cascade of second messengers, and it is the second messenger that will then propagate the cellular response. Okay. All right. So another way you can kind of talk about this is that cellular activity is initiated indirectly here for amino acid or protein-based hormones, whereas here it is activated directly. Okay. All right, so we're going to stop here for video 2. And when we come back for video 3, we're going to start to talk about the endocrine glands, starting with the hypothalamus, and we'll just make our way down. All right, thank you so much.